Well, welcome to Signs of Life, where we find hope in the headlines. My name is Chase Tremere, I'm one of our hosts, and joined with me is Serena Tremere and Miss Montana Christofferson.
Yep. Did you actually say your last name?
Yeah, you
Sound
said
like Chase Tremere.
Chase Tremere and no, and well,
ear.
that's how I tell. That's when I in the parentheses thing. You like trim dot ear.
Seriously? Dot,
Yes.
dash, you mean?
No, it's a dot when you're
Because
doing
they'll
it that
say,
way.
if you don't, they'll say trimmer.
Trimmer.
It's true, because people don't have patience to slow down and read every letter
Wow.
in the word. But that's not what we're talking about today.
Oh, okay.
Today, I was recently recognized as one of the top dads in America, and I'm just kidding. That was a terrible setup. But we are talking about parenting today, parenting styles, different parents, all sorts of things. And we've got some articles, we've got some TikToks, we got some videos, some different things that we see that honestly are super relevant right now. And so I'm going to introduce us to our first article today that is going to come up. And this is psychologists saying ultimately that positive parenting is the best form of parenting styles. And so, Serena, when you hear positive parenting, how would you describe that for everybody?
Be a cheerleader and just tell your child how positive and wonderful they are.
They do everything right.
They do everything right.
Yeah,
That's
can do no
what
wrong.
it is not.
That's what it is not. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, when we think about this article, positive parenting, that's an easy conclusion to draw just from the first word, positive. And so it's really important to dismantle that. Like, what do you mean by positive parenting, and why is it the best? As a therapist, we work with parenting styles all the time, and we always come back to this one, positive parenting. You could replace positive with gentle parenting or empathetic parenting or connection-based parenting, yada, 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 meaning the same thing. Basically, you're saying, hey, I respect you as a little person. I want you to respect me. I'm going to hold you accountable. I'm going to set your boundaries and consequences. But in doing so, it's not all about me as a parent, and it's not all about you as a child, right? Warm and fuzzy, handle you with white gloves, or me, I have all the power.
Yeah.
It's saying we're going to work together, and we're going to do that while maintaining connection and attachment. So focusing on the positives of your child does not mean you do everything right, you can do no wrong. It means that, hey, you're a good person. I see what you need, but I won't let you hurt me in this way. And so I hold consequences or I hold boundaries with you. And essentially, you're teaching your child how to maintain a healthy self-identity while also having restraint and boundaries for themselves, and teach them how to make better choices than we typically would on our own. And it's not an easy feat. I mean, so they describe in this article, like, why it's one of the best parenting styles, but also how to apply that, like how to do that. It brings up the example of when, just a couple weeks ago, Daisy, I got my first I hate you.
Oof.
From our 3-year-old.
She's 3. And it was dinner time, and she wanted me to go play with her, but Mommy still had a whole plate because Mom's plates get cold. That's just the reality. And so I was sitting there eating, and she was done because she got a hot plate, and and she wanted me to go play with her. And I was like, well, it's dinner time, and Mommy's gonna eat, and then we'll go play together. And she was not okay with that answer. So she runs up the stairs, and she goes, I hate you, Mom. And Chase's face was like that. He was like, oh, okay, that was a leap. That was.
I'm not sure how that
A
happened.
little dramatic.
A little bit. Where did she get that
your
from?
Daughter.
Your daughter, you mean.
And I had to, like, in me, I wanted to just, like, what did you say?
I'll show you hate.
But I was, like, just kept chewing my food, and I was like, ooh, okay, I got to, like, respond to this one. I can't just let it go, even though I wanted to, or I wanted to explode. Yeah. But she's like, oh, she went to the bathroom, and I said, hey, when you're done, can you come and talk to Mama? And she's like, she comes back, and she's standing right in front of me, and I said, give me your eyes, right? And where before she just would stand like this. And I said, give me your eyes. And I taught her about how that was, when I hear you say you hate me, I hear that you're angry with me. And it's okay to be angry with me, but it's not okay to hurt me, right, with your words. And those are hurtful words. So what you can say instead is, I feel angry, can you come play with me? Or those sorts of things, just giving her a replacement, but also holding a boundary that wasn't okay. And then we concluded that. So with an I love you, yada, yada. And it's 3 years old stuff, which when you are not dealing with a toddler, 3-year-old stuff, you could be asking, like, how do you apply this
to my 16-year-old.
to a teenager, right? And like going into the story that you brought up in the very beginning, the Michigan shooting, like, we're gonna talk about that too, like, but how do we do this in other ages, other stages of development? But yeah, this was recently written December 4th on how to raise successful kids, and that this parenting style research has indicated that it has brought more positive outcomes than other styles of parenting.
And I think something you just talked about there, whether it's a 3-year-old, and obviously we don't have an older kid yet, but one of the points of the article talks about the when and then kind of thing. So taking that time with Daisy to say, hey, when you say this, then this is how I feel. Or when you do this, then this is what happens
Natural consequences
to us. And that's, I think, super important, parenting or not, just in general, when we think about the way that we're receiving things that people are saying to us or doing to us, and that helps us process those feelings before we react. You know, growing up, I played football and got all like the goofy locker room posters and everything, but I remember something our coach gave us one time.
What the heck is a locker room poster?
Like the, like...
That scares me.
Like, quitter, try hard and practice every day.
Sore muscles are...
There's no
pain, no gain, and all, all of those things.
Stupid.
I'm trying to think of one of them. It doesn't matter. But all those kind of goofy sayings that, like, sure, they're kind of true or whatever. But one that we got, that our coach gave us, and it was actually this little poem, and the idea of it, the last line talked about, the idea of reacting versus responding, and that life is really 10% what happens to me, 90% how I react, respond to it. And just that idea of learning that, and then even as a parent living that out, but helping our child to see that like these things around you are, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's not, but choosing to pause and to take that breath. We've done that with Daisy. We're gonna take a breath, we're gonna count to 5, and she actually really thinks it's fun once she does it.
She's like, calm down.
Like, girl, get it.
These are things I was never taught as a 3-year-old, let alone a 15-year-old, or a early 20s. I was never taught like how to regulate my emotions. Like that just wasn't part of my upbringing.
And I think that's something too, like I would ask you, the authoritarian parenting is kind of what this compares, positive parenting to that. Or when I think about gentle parenting, which really is all over, social media now, and
very popular.
Very popular. But my question then would be, and like, what does discipline then look like? Because for me, growing up, like you said, I didn't get gentle parenting, but I had a lot of discipline. And I don't think it was necessarily a bad thing. Like, I turned out okay. Haven't been to jail yet. I came in Keenan. But I do think there's a place, like, discipline is part of those consequences. But when I hear gentle parenting, to me, it sounds like zero discipline.
Oh, no.
So what does that look like when we talk about positive or gentle parenting?
So it looks like I keep the respect of my child's body and their emotions in mind when I'm correcting their behavior. And I also keep in mind as a parent, I want to maintain connection. Because there's different styles of parenting, right? Authoritative, which is all about the parent. Do as I say because I said so, right? And dismisses the kid. And then there is permissive parenting, which is that it's all about the kid, and so I want to make you feel as comfortable, and so I don't really implement consequences. I'm kind of hands-off, and I just, I'm here, and I give you a lot of love and affection, but I don't provide any structure or boundary for you or consequence. And uninvolved, which is just like absent, neglectful. And then authoritative, and this is what this falls into, positive parenting. Authoritative is that mutual respect. And we're working together, we're sharing power. Whether you're a 3-year-old or 20-year-old. But as a parent and disciplining in positive or gentle parenting, I choose not to spank you, because if I'm saying to you, you don't hit me in the face, I'm not going to hit you.
Yeah.
Right? So I want you to respect my body. I'm going to respect your body. And so it takes a lot of intentionality to sit and help regulate my emotions so I can mirror to my child how to regulate their emotions. Because that's the core issue, is that I tend to just impulse and, do what I correct or discipline out of feeling.
It sounds like you have to be a pretty healthy person to implement positive parenting.
Anyone can do it if you're committed to, just like focusing on like that emotional, empathetic based lens. But yeah, I mean,
It's still a challenge.
it's a challenge.
Yeah.
I mean, as a therapist, I would say, like, I've done a lot of personal work for me, and Chase is in a really healthy place as well, but we're human.
Yeah.
And you're not going to get it right 100% of the time, but you do set boundaries, you set limits, I'll hold Daisy down when she wants to slap me, or I'll set her aside and I'll walk away, and I have to gather myself and show her, and even communicate to her, Mom, I feel angry, or I feel sad. I need time to go, cool down. And then we always come back to it. So that's a little bit of how that looks.
Yeah, and I would say on the flip side, you coming from the therapeutic side there, like me on kind of the other half is, parents are probably doing better than they think they are, and I think it's always, like kind of Montana used the reference there, to me it's not the 0 to 100 scale, like it's pass fail. It's like, hey, that was a good time. Hey, you took a breath there, and you let that consequence happen, whether it's they didn't want to put shoes on, their feet got cold, that's on them. But I think it's not even measuring up the wins. I think it's recognizing, okay, in this moment, this is what I thought was best for my kid and for me, and I did that, and maybe it'll change next time. But I think all parents need to hear, you're doing better than you probably think you're doing, and it's not easy, and it's exhausting. And I say that as a dad of a 3 and a 1-year-old. I know they'll get older and there'll be different problems, but there's always going to be those struggles, and it's always going to be exhausting and all those things. But I think letting parents know, at the end of the day, like you're raising a child to become an adult, to become independent, to become a positive person who's making an impact. That's a big project.
Huge.
And it never ends.
Lifelong.
And it's not easy.
Yeah.
And so keep up the good work, parents.
Absolutely.
That's good. Well, I wanted to play this video that highlights what probably not positive parenting is. We're just gonna watch the first 15 seconds of it, and you might have seen it before. It's actually kind of an old video, but it just felt very fitting in this moment. So let's watch it.
Clean the house now, people! I want this place looking like Disney on Ice in 1 minute. Terry, if you haven't made your bed, throw it away. It's too late to make it now. Company is coming. Get rid of the couches. We can't let people know we sat.
I remember this
Okay,
video.
yeah.
That's my favorite.
It's
I can't let people know we're
funny.
sick.
We can't let people know we're sick. I feel like everybody has a mom or has had moments where their mom is like
Or
this.
has been that.
Or has been that mom.
Let's be real.
That was growing up. I remember we were
angry.
we were at church, and my aunt, uncle, cousins were there, and I wanted to go play with my cousins after church, and I remember saying, my cousins were like, hey, can you come over, whatever. And I remember already answering. I was like, no, we have to clean the house, because we clean the house every Sunday, even though it's clean and there's not much more we can do, and nobody's coming over, and it's
Baseboards
fine.
are going
and
to be inspected.
It was, yes. And that was always the go-to, though. It was like, no,
That
we got to
is so
clean. We got to
funny.
clean.
The bedroom one is so funny to me because it was, you have to make your bed, you have to do that. No one's gonna come into my room. We're all sitting in the living room.
True.
No one's gonna come into my room. Why would I have to clean my room? Doesn't even make sense. I still don't get it.
They're going to come.
They're gonna come in.
They're gonna come in
They're
and
gonna
they're
check
gonna judge
every
you.
single
And they're going to
Ooh,
say,
wow,
nope,
you
can't
know
hang
bad.
out here. I'm out of here.
I'm leaving. Bye.
Well, we've touched on this topic a couple of times throughout this episode. We want to spend a little bit more time focusing in on the story of Ethan Crumbley and his parents. Ethan Crumbley being the shooter of the Michigan school shooting recently. And just acknowledge the families that have been hurt and the students who have lost their lives or have been injured, but 100% of those children that have been traumatized. And that is something that goes has gone really unacknowledged from the accountability side for parents, right, of the shooter. And that's really where we're going to spend. This isn't going to become like a, let's talk about all of these different aspects and angles of, what happened, what transpired. But really interestingly, how the parenting style of what we know, obviously wasn't a part of the family, but what we know of, and how the parents, Ethan's parents, showed, in my clinical opinion, permissive parenting. Okay, so this is a CNN article talking about how the parents are held. They were held on bond. They're now in custody, being charged for 4 counts of manslaughter. And knowing some of the things that they knew, and knowing the ammunition that was purchased, knowing the gun that was purchased, knowing all of these different things, and telling him, one of the things that really stood out to me, you just got to learn how to not get caught. Really stood out to me, because that's really reckless and life-threatening behavior. That their kid has been signal. And remember, permissive parenting isn't that a parent who's not loving or present. It's a parent who's just, it's about the child, and I want you to feel, I'm not going to give a whole lot of consequence.
Whatever makes you happy.
Kind of thing. And I see a whole lot of that here, and how obviously how dangerous the outcome was, and how harmful and deadly, essentially, that was to other people, but even to their son and to themselves, and how they're being held accountable to that. I mean, what are y'all's thoughts on that, through that lens of just...
I don't know. It's wild. Obviously, it's so sad, and everyone that was affected, which is, like you said earlier, everybody. Like, it's not just some of the families. It's everybody in that school that. It's just interesting, because you're right. I couldn't think of another time that parents have been held to that standard after the fact. And I mean, it is like, it's a weird probably line, even just legally, because you're like, was it the kids' actions? Was it the parents' actions? What is this weird combination of both? And I don't know. It's crazy.
And we're talking about accountability here in obviously a nationwide tragedy, but like accountability and parenting in other areas, right? Like, hey, when my child is, we're talking about consequences. Like, does positive parenting have consequences? Do I hold my child, or am I as a parent ever held accountable in other areas of life? And we have to be. We have to show accountability to our kids, regardless of their age. Like, I'm not going to get it right, and I'm going to be accountable to you, that I'm going to own what I feel or what I've done or the mistakes that I've made, and come to you and let you know that I'm being held accountable for that, right? By apologizing, by having consequences for myself, those sorts of things that a lot of times as parents we don't do, because I'm the parent.
Right, yeah.
I'm the parent, and I don't report to my child, and it's not about reporting to your child. It's about modeling to your kid that accountability is honorable and necessary.
And I think part of reading some of just the facts of this deal, of the text messages and the things they said, there was almost this seemingly missing identity of the parent, of their role and who they really were. Like, you're not a friend. You can be friendly with your kids and you can have fun, but you have to be the parent at the end of the day. Not necessarily this authority figure, but the parent, the one who's guiding. I've heard a speaker one time define love as the ability to protect and to provide. If I love somebody, then I want to protect and provide for them. And as parents, we want to love our kids. Well, that means we're going to protect and provide them. Like, we're going to protect them, and not just in this physical manner of like, oh, I'm going to fight people off, but like, we're going to protect them and help them learn how to protect themselves, how to protect their thoughts, how to protect. I think about protection in some of these videos. Like, we have social media that is just rampant and viral now, that we saw videos of this incident in the middle of it happening, and those were going around crazy. And thinking about these kids who were had been taught ultimately by teachers, by parents, hide in the room, lock the doors, run out the window. I mean, like, that was a good thing. That was a great thing for those kids that that made it out. And I think about, provision, providing your kids a safe place, providing a space for them to feel feelings, but also like providing for them boundaries. Like, I'm not going to put something in my kids' hands that they're not ready for.
Right.
I'm not going to tell them, well, if you can get away with it, then okay. Like, what does that do for them? That doesn't provide anything positive, and it doesn't protect them at all. And so I always think about that as I think about, not even just parenting, but just relationships. If I love someone and I want to protect and provide for them, what the things they need, the things that I can give. And so I think it's a good reminder of, all of us as parents, like, we want our kids to see us as friends and to open up to us. And you can do that without being their buddy, like without being the person who's enabling them to go do something silly.
Without being enabling.
Yeah.
Right. Like and that's the holding connection, but also holding boundaries. So like it brings up the question, we've talked a lot about this in my office, even of like, so does that mean that whenever my kid messes up or is going through something or does something reckless or harmful, it's always my fault, right? And that's not true. Your child has autonomy, right? Individual autonomy. They have the right to make their choices, to control their body, their tongue, their actions. But as a parent, we recognize, what is my role in those actions? What is my role in teaching and mirroring and getting the help from my child that they may need? These parents were informed, your child needs counseling. Get this child counseling within 48 hours. Please take your child home. They refused to take the child home. They did not take him to counseling. They didn't check his backpack. It's just this like, we don't care. We're not going to do anything, and that is irresponsible and reckless parenting, and so don't think that, man, if my kid makes a mistake or does something really even intentionally harmful to another person or to themselves, there's very real, that mom shame, that parent shame of like, it's all my fault. What have I done? I've sat with a mother whose son has committed suicide. And that mother was wrecked with, what could I have done better? It was my fault. If I would have just done this or done that, then, and that's such a very real and valid emotional experience. But we also have to understand when guilt is present, because it needs to be present, because guilt is that I did something to cause hurt to another person. And then there's that displaced guilt that likes to come in and say, it's all your fault.
You should have done this.
Yeah, it's all your fault. And even though, I did nothing to bring harm to this person, it's displaced, but it's still there, and it's a very real experience. And so it's just that balance of knowing what's in my control to do and to help my child, whether that's mirroring and modeling behavior, holding them accountable, holding myself accountable, giving them the support that they need, or am I just more like, hey, just don't get caught? And I'm not going to listen to the school, the recommendations, the things, the red flags that are coming my way. That's pretty permissive and neglectful, in my opinion. So, and it led to a really big disaster. Not even a disaster, a tragedy.
For sure. Well, this next story that I want to talk about really highlights just different challenges that all parents face. Obviously, the obvious here is that Sandra Bullock, love her.
I love Sandra.
I am not a parent. Obviously, that is true, but what Sandra Bullock talks about in this article is just how there can be unique challenges, especially when there's cultural differences, or really, obviously, any parent. So it's a really great article that she talks about, and it made me think of all the different ways that people can act as parents in your life. Obviously, Sandra Bullock is not the biological parent of these kids, but she's very much a parent. And
an adoptive mother is a mother.
Yes.
Like a foster parent is a parent. And that this article, she's just really expounds on what's that been like for her.
Right.
And in a really heartwarming and realistic.
She's so great.
Realistic way.
And even in my personal story, I am adopted. I've had my biological parents. I've had my adopted parents, and we joke around. I have these parents called fake parents.
Fake parents.
Maybe is not the most honoring term to them, but it without further explaining everything, fake parents are just kind of the spiritual parents in my life that have been with me from 17 to where I'm at now. And I just thought it was so interesting because there's so many different types of parents. And I think people play parents in your life without being your parents. And it doesn't mean someone has to be 20 years older, 40 years older than you to be your parent.
Or giving birth to you.
Yeah, or literally give birth to you or legally adopt you, any of these things. And just how important it is, like guidance really throughout your whole entire life, how important that is. But the challenges that come with that, especially, obviously I can empathize with some children that are like, okay, so what does it look like to have a parent when you don't have your biological parents in your life? And when you hear people talk about, oh, you know, I got this from my mom, I got this from my dad, or you do family trees in middle school or elementary school. I remember my teacher giving me that assignment, and I was like, what am I supposed to do here? I don't have these answers. How am I supposed to turn this in? And how difficult that can be for a kid.
For sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, that perspective is so helpful because it's like a perspective from, like Sandra Bullock in this article, she's talking about raising 2 children she adopted that are of opposite race and culture than she is. As a white female, she's raising 2 African American children, but then there's the layers of not just race, not just culture, but now like this isn't my real mom, right? My biological mom, and these aren't my biological children, but love is love, and that she talks about in this article, and how to learn to parent her kids, right? And as I used to work in foster care and adoption in that world for 6.5 years, and I used to teach the classes that Sandra talks about in this article of parenting them with a very intentional lens, right? So like those assignments you get in school, we're already 5 steps ahead of that, that shouldn't happen to you, and unfortunately it happens so often. And so how to parent with the lens of your unique story and the difficult places that you have had to travel through, emotionally, familially, all of those things. And it's a beautiful example of how to take in children that are not your own and love them as your own. And in this, whether it's Daisy and Lucy and little guy on the way, or adoptive children, or a spiritual kid, or whomever, that I see that child. I see them as a whole person, as a human being, and meeting them where they are and giving them what they need. And
I think too, entertainment world, like This Is Us, popular TV show, I feel like they always did a really good job of talking about those struggles and, adopting that third kiddo and just talking about that, bringing that up. And I know it's, a show made for entertainment, but I felt like it was always a good picture, and it made me think about that because, like you said, whether you've got, a crazy parental upbringing or you've got the best parents in the world, you need more than just 2. Common phrase, it takes a village. Like, it's real. Like, it takes a group of people that are playing different roles in your life. You may have great parents, but that's great. As you get older, like, you need people who are guiding you in these other areas, outside of the things that maybe your parents may be guiding. Maybe you need someone who specifically is helping you as you are trying to take your career and get better at it. As you're looking at your finances, as you're focusing on your relationship with a future spouse, partner. And I think, finding those people, maybe even jotting down some of those areas in your life and saying, okay, who's my parent here? Like, who's my mentor? Who's the person who's speaking life and guiding me and holding me even responsible to some of those consequences? Because I don't think parenting stops when you become a parent. We still need that. We need mentors who are, helping us and parenting us still in different ways. And, they may not be paying for our cell phone bill like a parent does for a child, but
someone pays for our cell phone.
No, we do. But I'm just saying they still have a role to play that shifts. I heard Toby has actually said it before, that parenting is this what does he say? This series of
painful releases.
Painful releases, yes. And just as these kids get older, you're releasing. But I think my counter argument to him, which he can't argue back because he's not here.
He's not here today.
I think you're releasing a lot but you're also releasing different phases of their life. You know, like I said, maybe you stop paying some of the bills. Maybe you, you stop catching them as they're falling off a couch. But I think there's other areas that you still get to hold a role in. And Montana, even as you shared with your story, I think about the people in your life, and I'd ask too, you know, how did you go about allowing those people in to play those roles in your life?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that is hard. Like, for anyone that's been in foster care or that has gone through different parents, it can be hard to trust those people, trust new people, because you're always, at least for me, always in the back of your mind thinking like, I'm gonna mess up. I'm gonna do something that's gonna make them not want me anymore, and then I'm gonna have to find somebody else. And then, you know, especially when they start playing some big roles, like my family, fake family, real family, fake family, you know, helping me buy a car. I just bought a car this past weekend, and I was so grateful for their guidance and their help on that. And then I'm thinking like, well, what happens if you know, a year from now they're not in my life, but now I have this car that they helped me with, and what kind of guilt will that bring up in that? And it can be really hard, and it's being very transparent. And for me, it's really difficult to have those type of conversations because I'm like, I don't know what to do here. But opening up to those people and being like, hey, I do struggle with this little trust factor in this relationship, and I just want to be honest that I'm going to have these doubts, and I might need a little bit extra reassurance, and I might ask you 20 times if it's really okay that I come over for Thanksgiving. But, you know, thankfully, like, I really do think the Lord has put amazing people in my life that do get to help me there. But I did want to mention, if anybody is feeling that or has gone through a similar situation, the holidays can be really difficult for that, because you're like, who do I owe it to be at their house? And how am I supposed to manage 15 different houses? Because it's great. I mean, on the one hand, it's like, oh, I have these friends, and a lot of, like my spiritual family, I would say, are my best friend's parents, like those type of people. And I want to be respectful and, you know, be thankful for all their guidance in my life. And that can come with spending time with them on the holidays. But then on the other side, I'm like, well, I can't go to everybody's house. And who do I have to let down in order to make somebody else happy? And there's so much pressure on that. And it took a lot of years to, still don't have it together, just to be clear, but a lot of years to realize, like, okay, I can set those boundaries, and they're not going to leave me. They're not going to New Year come like, bye, see you never, you know. Like,
you didn't come to Christmas.
Yeah, well, bye. Never talk to you again. We didn't fill your stocking this year.
You got cold.
Yeah. But it can be really, really difficult. And having people that are outside of that situation to talk through that with can be really helpful. And that's something awesome. Y'all do a lot in my life.
You're invited to Christmas, so don't let us down. We'll hope to see you there.
Don't let us down. We won't talk to you ever again.
Yeah, deal. Okay.
We joke about this.
We
joke about this because
it's fine. We joke about it.
Here's your one sweet moment. Thank you for sharing that, Montana. And like you just said, it's a process, and it probably always will be at some level. But I think it is important to ultimately to fight for those things. You know, to take that step, whether it's you or me or anyone. Anytime we're letting anybody in our life in any role, it takes us kind of giving some trust and saying, okay, are you going to manage that trust well? Are you going to grow that trust? And that's really hard, but it's so important. And it's what ultimately makes our life better when we let people in. And this was, I think, the design of our life, of our world, is to not try to do this alone, to not live in isolation. Like, God put people together. He brought value to community and sharing life together, not just little things, but everything. And so I've seen that work out so great and encouraging and so well for people, whether it was a parenting role or a friendship role, but it all starts with that step of trust ultimately. So, get to our mailbag. We want to see a little cute TikTok here before we get our questions, so check this out. Huggy.
is so cute.
best case scenario of gentle parenting.
That
Yep.
is the best case
You
scenario.
know,
Talking
where
it out.
you're teaching your kid to have empathy for others, owning it, making it right.
Yep.
Right. Brene Brown says something that has always stuck with me. It's not my responsibility to get it right every time. It's my responsibility to make it right.
That's good.
And I try and teach my girls that by owning that myself. Like, I'm not going to get it right 100% of the time, but it is my responsibility to make it right. So how am I going to make it right? Am I going to apologize? Am I going to own this? Am I going to whatever it is? And so this little buddy just totally did that, and that's so sweet.
So cute.
So sweet.
So sweet.
And you won't brag on yourself, but I've seen you do this all the time with Daisy, and you get frustrated. And I know everyone thinks you're perfect. You're pretty close, but
Pretty close, I'd say.
No, no.
not really. No, I'm just kidding. But I'm kidding. But seriously though, I think there's times where we're running around, we're trying to get stuff done, and we let our anger get the best of us, and you put on your mommy voice a little loud,
My
and
boom voice
and
is what
then
she calls it.
Boom voice, because it echoes
voice.
across the house.
Yeah,
and then
it's pretty
Daisy's
loud.
like, that hurt my feelings, and
Oh.
but I've seen you always go back and say, hey, I'm sorry, like I shouldn't have responded that way, I shouldn't have said that.
Mommy put her boom voice on,
Yeah.
and I needed to cool down.
Yep, and I think that's such a good model for Daisy. And I mean, she's perfect now. She's always going to get it right. But once again, it's making it right. Like sometimes we're going to get it right when.
Huge
Sometimes we have to make it right, and
Yep.
that's still a win.
Still win.
So win.
So let's go to our mailbag question of the day. We love when you guys send in questions. This is going to be from Leslie from Austin, Texas. She says, and this is a long one, so just hang in there with me. She says, I had a father who was really hard on me growing up. Whenever I made a mistake, he would explain to me in painful details all the ways I could have and should have avoided making the mistake,
Sounds like my dad.
pointing out how simple it should have been for me to avoid it. As a result, I'm a very driven person who tries to think through every situation before making a decision, and consequently, I'm very successful in my professional life. But I'm also hard on myself, and it makes feeling happy or proud of accomplishments challenging to do. It feels instinctual to me to teach my children the same way. I mostly resist, but sometimes I fall into the same over-explaining, highly directive teaching pattern my dad had. I feel doomed to leave them with the same issues I'm dealing with today. Are there ways I can retrain myself not to do this? Am I overthinking this?
Oof, that is a good question.
You had a comment there while Chase was reading.
Yep.
Oof.
Oof.
Sounds like my dad.
Yes. Yeah, my dad was this was his thing. Obviously, he would always start, do what I say, not what I do, which never quite made sense. And he used to always say, you can ask me why I tell you something. And I was like, great. And then I'd ask him why, and he would be like, because I said so. I'm like, what?
That's a good dad juke, right?
Yeah.
You can ask me.
I'm so confused. What do you mean right now? But that's hard. I mean, that is a lot.
Yeah, I mean, this
Yeah.
is a very
Should have
common
avoided that.
style of parenting, but style of upbringing, style of functioning. And what was parented from her dad's lens, highly directive, all the things you could have done right, you should have done right. That is the motto of perfectionism. Okay? I could have, I should have, I don't celebrate my wins, I just keep going, I keep going. Highly successful, highly driven people, ambitious, I mean, they're top of their class, and they're a lot of my clientele. Honestly, because I can't make errors, I can't make mistakes, there's no room for that, there's no room for, I am constantly, even though I've made straight A's, I didn't do enough,
Right.
It
was a 92, not a 96.
No, it was a 99, not 100. It was 100, but not 104 because I didn't get the extra credit right. It's this constant, always I could have done more. And so there's not a pause for but look what I have done. Look at all that's gone right. And it can create children who have that same mentality of what she's describing. And so this fear, right, of becoming myself because I am my dad.
Yeah.
And so then, or raising little people who are like me, who have become like me. And that's a real fear for a lot of parents or young adults, individuals who are preparing to be parents or say I don't want to be a parent because I'm messed up.
That is literally my biggest fear. I'm like, I don't know. And Leslie, like, you might be thinking what I think a lot is like, well, if I haven't been modeled this good behavior, like we've looked at all these articles that really encourage modeling, then how am I supposed to do this? It feels so overwhelming. Like, that's why I always joke, like, I need you to be in my life still when I have kids, because I'm just gonna send them over to your house. Not really, no. No.
But she asked a very good question of, are there ways I can retrain myself not to do this? Am I overthinking this? No, I would not say you're overthinking it. It's a great place to be considering to consider how I was raised and what I want to do differently. Yeah. That's a really, really good place to be. A lot of people don't ask that question. It's just like, it is what it is. Yeah. You know, this is how I was raised, and so this is what I do, right? But to pause and ask, like, can I retrain myself? And I would say, yeah. And that's allowing yourself to have compassion and grace, allowing yourself to pause and say, like, you know what, instead of thinking and only focusing on the distortion in my mind that is, focus on this one thing I didn't do right, or the couple of things that went wrong. Also adding to that, but look at all that's gone well. Look at all that's gone right, because that tends to dismiss, right? We disregard all of that, and we just hyper-focus on that, and we become very self-critical. So you can retrain your brain.
Yeah, you said compassionate and graceful, I think, for yourself. Like,
for yourself.
Leslie, that's for yourself first.
That's for you.
And you set that example for your kids so that when you're helping them do that, because I think sometimes, you know, at least for me, I hear these things and I'm like, oh, well, yeah, then don't be driven, you know, don't try. That's not what we're saying, for sure. But there's a healthy way to, to contend for things, to fight for things, to strive, to want to be better, to want to earn something better, to get first place, but also, you know, pausing enough to recognize that that doesn't change your value, whether first, second, or last. Like, that doesn't change your value as a human, as a person, as a parent, your worth. And recognizing that and helping your kids recognize that, it almost takes the burden off of, okay, so I can go try this thing and I might be really great at it and that's awesome, or I might be terrible at it, that's still okay. Like, I can try something different.
Even if I want to try harder.
Yeah.
Right? Even if I recognize my mistakes, I am not my mistake, right? Like, and I think you talk about your value is not in what you do, and what is my value in then? You know, and that's a very big question on where do I find my worth? Where do I find my value, like at its core? And even as a parent, like the way that maybe not every parent, but the way that I and you parent our daughters and how we're able to have this positive parenting or compassion or empathetic is because we're connected to the heart of God, you know, and how God has grace and compassion and consequences and all of those things for me. I share that. And if I'm not connected to God, oh my God, I see the boom voice comes out, right? Voice. Like I'm not patient. I'm not kind. I'm short-tempered, and I'm like, come on, Daisy, I cannot read this book. You know, like I like start unraveling. But when I am connected to God and I'm keeping that in my mind and it's at the center of who I am, I parent through that lens, right? And so we fall back on, you know, who am I connected to, you know, and how does God parent me, you know? And so you raise that doubt of like, I can't do this because I haven't been modeled this. It's like, but you're connected to the heart of God. Yeah. You totally have. Yeah. You've got everything you need, and you will grow through what you don't have, right? And He will be there to teach you in those gaps. And so will all the other family that you have, you know, to be there to catch you, because it's a net of support. So I just encourage Leslie to really, you know, have that compassion and that grace for herself, to allow herself to make mistakes, that she's not defined, you're not defined by your mistakes. You're a really good mom to think through this. A lot of times we think, oh my gosh, like I'm the worst because I haven't done this, or because I'm like that. And that's a really solid place to actually be. So like Chase mentioned earlier, you're doing much better than you think you are.
And I think I would say it in this way, you know, you talked about being connected to the heart of God. Like, God's the one for me. I'm choosing to place Him in the driver's seat, pick your metaphor, but I think about it this way. He's the one who's setting like the race, like what the finish line really looks like. And I'm trusting that because I've seen that in my life be the best finish line. It's not what I'm trying to contend to race for. Like sometimes I'm racing for something and realize like this isn't valuable and this isn't helping me, it's hurting me. And so when I think about who God is and I think about what I read about him and the things he wants for me, I think about even the life of Jesus and the example he led. It was this person who was graceful, who loved God, his Father, and loved people and told us that's all you have to do. And so when I think about that being the finish line, like you said, it changes my perspective of, okay, like what am I raising Daisy to do? Like, hey, Daisy, if you're going to play softball, go hit a home run, but then like go high five the other team and say, hey, good game. You know, like let's raise good kids, you know, great kids who love God, but also great kids who love people. And it's okay to win, and it's okay to beat somebody, and it's okay to be first place. And we're dealing with that now. Gosh, she wants to play Candyland all the time.
She wants to win all the time.
All the time. And like teaching her, like, you're going to lose sometimes, and that's okay. Or you may win every time, but you don't have to be a jerk about it. and I think
Raising good humans.
yes, all that comes back to, you know, who's setting the scoreboard? You know, is it you? Is it a company? Is it someone else? Or are you stopping and pausing and really reflecting? Okay, like for me, if I'm trusting God, then I know how to win. Like I know what that looks like. It looks like loving Him and loving people. I know how to lose based on, like you said, those consequences because you can't avoid them. Gentle parenting, positive parenting, like pick your thing. There's consequences for everything.
There's got to be.
Exactly, and so at that point it's, can you make it right? You know, if you don't get it right the first time, can you make it right? If you mess up, can you go back and fix it? And I think, like we talked about, Leslie, you're not overthinking it. It sounds like Leslie may have even gone to therapy as she's identified these things she saw. And that's not putting a blame on her dad either. It's not, oh, my dad made my life terrible. It's all his fault. But just saying, okay, I've solved that perspective, and there's maybe some good things that came out of that as well.
Sure.
But there's probably a gap of some things that I know I want to make sure that my kids experience differently. And so I think that's a great place to be. Well, thank you guys so much for joining. Make sure you subscribe. And also, the first parent you think of right now, boom, send this episode to them. Send it as a moment of encouragement, or just ask them, hey, has this worked for you? Do you believe these guys, or do they have no clue what they're talking about? Because we would love to hear from you.
It could go either way.
It could go either way. But thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.